Anyone on the board wish to make any comments at this point? I think we have a lot that we heard tonight.
Mark Levine, a question for Stu. What is the existing width of the pavement of Samuel? On the plans, it shows a 50-foot right-of-way, but that's standard. What is the existing pavement?
I believe it's 30 feet.
You believe or you know?
I don't have the ability to measure it because I'm working off of the screen right now. If you want to give me a moment, I will give you a definitive answer to that. If you want to move on to another question,
Martin,
I'll get a definitive answer.
I have the plan in front of me with a scale. It scales out to be about 28, 29 feet.
So it's, Mark, it's probably 30, and probably a lot of these streets, that's what they are. 50-foot right-of-way and 30 feet of pavement.
well, yeah, the newer streets, Alan, but some of the older streets aren't 30. They could be 25. That's one of my concerns.
Right, okay. We need to adjourn this project to a date specific.
The second comment that I have is that as a planning board, and this is basically to Stu, as a planning board, okay, we have to look at lighting, how it's going to impact the neighbors. With you leaving only 5 feet for screening, it's going to make it very hard, maybe impossible, to do proper screening for this facility. I don't know how you can change that. I don't know. Maybe the applicant can look into, and we had this happen many years ago, where an applicant looked into purchasing maybe a 10-foot strip of property from a neighbor. But
I don't think that will happen in this case, Mark.
well, Alan, I think it's up to the applicant to look into that.
Okay, well,
Because I don't see how you're gonna do a fence and planting in 5 feet.
okay, and I look at this is a minor issue. There are major issues with this project. If you were listening to everything that was said tonight, we
No,
got to
there-
deal
look.
with the major ones. Yeah, that's a problem, but it's not the biggest.
It might not be the biggest, but if I lived on that street, it would definitely be considered a major one. You're gonna have cars coming in and out of this site. And I think screening is very important.
Yeah,
One of the very important issues.
Yeah, I'm not
Have to screen
disagreeing
ahead.
with you, but I say some of the other issues
Oh,
are
yeah,
probably more significant than the screening.
I'll agree with you that there are several issues, but one of them that should be addressed is trying to eliminate that one variance, Stu, which you called insignificant, that it's only 5 feet, but it's 50%. So
Yeah,
that
I
is,
didn't call it insignificant.
okay, I take
All
that
right,
back, but,
let's not get hung up on
It's
this one little detail right now.
okay.
I mean, we heard a lot
And
tonight.
it might have been Alan that said it. But it's a major, to me.
I'm not saying,
It's one of
I'm
the.
not saying it's not an issue, but it's minor in comparison to a lot of the comments that we heard in the other issues.
No, I agree with you.
Okay, so right now, we need to adjourn the project.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, I have a
Chairman.
couple comments I'd like to make, and I want to, Mark, in this case, you went first, so you took the words right out of my mouth this meeting when you asked about the width of Samuel. And so I'll come back to that, but I just want to say that we've heard a lot of interesting things and a lot of very deeply sincere comments this evening for thought. I want to state that as a planning board, my view of the planning board is we look to minimize the environmental impact on a neighborhood, on a community, on our village, based on what an applicant has proposed building. When I think about environmental impact, that's traffic, that's noise, that could be daylight, that could be screening, safety, lighting, and many other factors that we take into consideration.
Right.
And so I'm not going to go into depth on any of those at this point. I do, however, in the beginning, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned your thoughts on referring the plan to the Rockland County, one of the agencies for safety, for
Fire.
process.
Okay,
I
okay.
would propose we should refer the plan to all three agencies.
Do.
When you say all three agencies, what do you mean?
So that's South Spring Valley.
The South Spring Valley Fire Department, if we send them this plan, first of all, anytime we send them a plan, they kick it back and say, you need to show us the turning radius of the Tower 20 area ladder. So this plan, for this site, we don't have that, okay? We know that's what they're gonna ask for. So in my opinion, I'm saying let's send it to another agency, which is the Rockland County Department of Emergency Services, to see what their response would be, to see whether they're going to say the same thing as the South Spring Valley Fire Department would, or they'll come back with some other comment. Maybe they won't come back and say, you have to have an area ladder that goes into the site. So the idea is to send it to a different agency that has a similar responsibility to see what kind of a response that we get.
But we know that there's a delayed response in getting a response from these agencies. And so, but if Hugh Gassner or South Spring Valley is going to be the responding agency in the, God forbid, there's an event at the building, I think they should be, the plan should be referred to them as well. That's all.
Okay, the only point I want to make is Rockland County Planning, when they send a letter, it normally says, please provide these plans to either the South Spring Valley Fire Department or the Village of Chestnut Ridge Fire Inspector or Rockland County Department of Emergency Services.
Okay.
So that's why I said, let's send it to them and see what response we get from them.
All right. And to the applicant, if we can get confirmation on the width of Samuel, there are a lot of buses on Samuel. If you have cars parked on both sides of the street and a bus coming through, it's going to be extremely tight. So I think it's really important for us to understand the width of Samuel.
I measured it as well, and I came up with the same measurement as Mr. Spence did. I came up with 29 feet at the point that I measured it. So.
Okay. I'll hold my other comments. I know it's late.
Okay, so
Mr. Chairman, before you,
wait 1 second. So since Jeff brought it up, does the board agree that we should be sending this plan to see what the Rockland County Department of Emergency Services has to say about the layout? Do you in agreement that we send it to them and not to the South Spring Valley Fire Department? I'm not getting a
I
response.
maintain it should be sent to all three.
I think if we know what they're gonna say, let's get another point of data. I think it makes sense to send it to Rockland County. We know, Jeff, and just in a response, we know that's the response we're gonna get. We could consider that as if they've responded that, because at the end of the day, these are not, final word on it. It's just another piece of information. We'll assume that that's the response, but I think it makes sense to send it to another agency.
Okay, where's Mr. Levine? Agreement?
I would say, I'd agree with Jeff, at this stage of the game, let's send it out now to all three.
I don't want to send it out to all three now because I have three other ones that have to go into the fire department in January. I don't want to give them 4 or 5 to do. They'll be bogged down and we won't get a response to the other ones.
I don't think that's an excuse not to send it.
All right, who else did I not hear from? Abe.
I mean, the only thing is that if we're saying we know that they're not gonna like it, so then, like Isaac is saying, what would be what would we be gaining by sending it to them?
We don't know what their response is going to be.
We know what their response is. They want an area ladder at every site. Okay, and I don't want to.
Based on,
I don't want to imperil the other 3 or 4 that I have to send them to review on the first Wednesday in January by adding another one to it and then not getting them the other ones back in time, because that's what's going to happen.
If the applicant needs a greater radius at the entrance or the exit of the building, they don't need to know as soon as possible.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to get that. We know we're not going to be able to get that truck in, and we know it. It's not going to go in physically. There's just no way. So I hear what the chairman is saying.
Okay, so
the responding agency.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Well, we're going to send it to the Department of Rockland County Emergency Services. We're not sending it to the fire department now, and we'll decide if we send it to them. It'll be another month because I don't want to imperil the other 3 or 4 that are going to them on January 6th. Okay?
Why delay this one?
Because it's going to imperil the other ones. And the other ones are, in a way, are farther along than this one is.
Well,
The applications are farther along.
If you hear from the county that this is okay, then you're not required to go anywhere else. Am I saying it wrong?
No, we understand that.
So
And we also understand that they're going to want, that South Spring Valley is going to want the Tower 20 area ladder from Tallman that weighs 78,000 pounds to be able to get around and circumnavigate every site that we give them.
Are you also sending it to the ambulance corps?
No, the ambulance corps, it does not respond at all. They haven't responded to 2 phone calls that Mary made. They don't respond to a letter that I sent to the chief of the ambulance corps asking him to call me personally because they don't review the plans anymore. So I'm not wasting Mary's time sending sets of plans to them that they're not doing anything with.
But if we have an obligation to refer to agencies, we should refer to agencies. If they choose not to respond, that's on them.
I agree with that. I mean, this has ramps going down to the basement. If something happens to someone down there, I mean, look, like Jeff just said, if they don't want to respond,
Okay, there are other
Fine.
issues that I
We'll
don't
act
wish to
without
discuss
their
now about sending this thing, another thing here, another thing there. There are problems in getting the things sent, okay? There are issues, okay?
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask what's, I know Mark said that it's our obligation, maybe Mr. Baum, could you tell us what is the board's obligation in terms of getting agency input like the ambulance corps?
Normally we send it, and in the past, going back years ago, when there were different groups in the Williams-based Ambulance Corps, we would get a response back from them in no greater than a month, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks. But now there's a whole new group in there. They're not giving us the time of day.
Or understood.
Don't return phone calls. Don't respond to plans that we've sent them, and didn't answer my letter when I said we have a problem. Please call me so we can discuss it. They just completely ignore it.
We refer to our attorney just to make sure we're in compliance.
You have, over the course of your reviews over many years, have referred these applications to emergency services, fire, ambulance, police, to get as much input as you can to make sure you are developing the property in the most safe way for the public. You're only required to do it if the County of Rockland Department of Planning mandates it in their review, in which case it has to be done unless you override it. But I think if you're planning a project and you're concerned about safety, or there's issues of safety, whether by emergency services for health reasons, or the fire department, it's good planning to take their comments into account as you're developing the site plan. And I sort of agree with Mark and Jeff that I understand, Alan, there's a problem with some of these agencies not responding in a timely manner or not responding at all. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't try and get their input and send it to them. And if they decide not to respond, well, then you'll have to deal with not having their response, but at least you sought their input as part of the planning process. So.
All right.
Can I just want to point out, I believe that there's no GML for this to the county because it's not within 500 feet of anything. So I don't think you're going to be getting a letter from the county here mandating anything. County planning meeting.
Yeah, I didn't say, all I said was in the past, if you get a letter from the county and the county mandates a review by a particular agency, you have to send it to that agency review,
right,
or override the review.
Right. No, I understand,
but as part of any good planning, Joe, you would know that it's probably a good thing to solicit input from any agency that may be servicing or providing services to this, and to take their comments into consideration as part of the overall site plan development, even if they don't respond.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. I'm just saying, don't expect to wait for the planning to say you got to do it, because that's not going to come. It's on you guys to decide that now, if that's going to happen or not. And look, I understand what everybody's saying here, and I understand the chairman's thought process. But if we're going to send this out in piecemeal, I don't think that's really fair. I think send it to everybody that you're going to send it to now. This way we can all get the comments and we can all respond to them in a timely way. So I'm saying, if you're going to send it to Spring Valley and you're going to send it to the county fire, do it at one point in time. If you're only going to send it to the county, I'm okay with that. That's fine. But then don't tell me in 4 months we need to hear from Spring Valley.
That's why we're trying to tell you
Exactly.
now.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you. It's your decision anyway.
I'm saying that if we add another thing to send to the fire department, we're going to have a problem. We're not going to get back the reviews from the other things that are going in there.
If this application is ready to go to the fire department now, then first come, first serve.
Agreed.
What are you telling me?
I mean, you're talking about applications in January that need to go to the fire department, but we have an application in December that should go to the fire department, and it should go in first.
And the ambulance corps.
Yes.
No, the other ones are farther along in their development. This is the first time this application has come before us.
I just think there's a
So,
significant.
would you like to know what the other projects are that have to go to the fire department?
No, I don't want to discuss them now, but we have 10,000 square foot opportunity for 200 people in a 10,000 square foot building. God forbid there's an emergency. I think it's worthwhile to pause and make sure that all agencies are alerted.
So what are you recommending? That we send it also to the Spring Valley Fire Department?
Yeah, I mean,
and to emergency services?
Yes, because this way we get it increases our odds of getting response by 3.
And don't forget the ambulance corps.
And so what I started to have Mary do is, because they weren't responding, I said, send them a letter or an email and say, I have the plans for the ABC building. Do you want to pick them up from our office, or we should forward them to you? And they don't respond.
Please send them to the building.
Alan, who are you referring to?
At the ambulance corps?
Okay, the
We're
ambulance corps.
directing it to the chief.
So all that I'm asking for is to do that. And if they don't respond, I'll be able to sleep well. You have a structure with 200 people. Okay, if the ambulance corps doesn't care, I've tried.
So you're still.
But it's,
all
I
saying,
feel it's
send them
our
the-
responsibility to try.
So you're all saying, send them the plans.
Email them the plans. It's one email to all of the agencies, and they can all be copied on the same email. That way, I'm not going to tell Mary how to do her job, but I don't.
No, normally we send the full-size plans. We don't give them normally the link to where the plans are stored. We send them a full set of plans.
I don't know if that's required, but
That's how we've been doing it for years. What do you think that we send them?
I think at some point we need to modernize and send them digital files. It's faster to get out, it's less expensive, and quite frankly, it probably has a better chance of being read.
I guess we could try that.
I don't know if there's protocol. If there's protocol, follow the protocol, but
You could try Hatsola.
Try Hatsola for what?
Well, I think the
To
point is-
get inside, about getting inside and saving people. That's probably who's going to respond to an emergency in the building.
Why do you say that when we have the William Faced Ambulance Corps right here in the village? They would only use them. I forgot what the term is when they're not available here. They get another ambulance corps to respond.
Right, but if they're not responding to you, you have somebody that would respond to you probably.
I think the point is that if there's an emergency in the building, I would agree that in almost all likelihood, it would be Hatsala responding based on the fact that there's members in the community, both in Dexter Park and in the surrounding neighborhoods, that are volunteering on the scene in any of these
I don't know.
circumstances.
It's called something like community support. The same thing if the fire engine is out at a separate fire and there's a fire in the village, they contact, I don't know, Pearl River, they contact Muncie or Spring Valley to cover for them. All right, anything else? We have to adjourn this date specific.
Mr. Chairman,
Before you did that, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask, we know we're going to have to go to the zoning board and we know that's going to take several meetings also. So could you simultaneously with this, send us to the zoning board? I don't think there's anything that holds you up from doing that.
One thing, Joe, is secret. It's a coordinated review until the planning board completes the secret review and makes a negative declaration. The zoning board of appeals can't act on this application.
You're right, and we did that with the last one.
Joe, you're either standing very still. or
That
you
we think
froze,
it's going to
Joe.
be multiple.
His connection is bad.
You freeze it.
There's a lot of issues.
Multiple
that have
steps
been
and multiple meetings
discussed.
in both places.
What's that?
Joe,
There's a lot of issues here we need to discuss.
Joe, most of what you just said was not heard by the board because your connection was bad and you froze and your audio kicked out, so.
I'm sorry. So what?
Bergen. Who are you referring to, Paul?
To Joe Churgan.
Oh.
All right, what I said was, we know that, I understand that the zoning board isn't going to be able to vote at present before the planning board finishes secret. However, we know this is going to take several meetings over a long period of time. So I'd like to at least start the process there.
Okay, but here's the problem with that. Maybe in further discussions with the planning board, I say maybe the board might say the impacts are too great and maybe the building needs to be reduced in size and the parking has to be adjusted somewhat and maybe some other changes need to be made to mitigate the impact of this project. I'm saying maybe, so why send you now if the plan changes, you'll be wasting your time going to the zoning board of appeals.
But I think if we don't,
We're moving too fast here.
well, but I think if we don't start, it's gonna take 6 months. I don't want this to take 6 months.
Right, but we're not at the point where the board this is the first meeting with the project. We heard from the public. There's a lot of concerns. The board needs to discuss it. And I don't know what the result of our discussions is going to be in terms of whether the project goes ahead the way it is, it gets modified, or whatever happens. We're going too fast here.
So,
If you want to go to the zoning board and apply for something and then something changes, I guess that's up to you. But my suggestion would be you shouldn't go to the zoning board at this time, because I don't know what comments the board is going to make about this project.
I understand, but there are variances here that I need to have to do this at all. So I'm willing to take the risk. If I spend a couple of extra meetings there, that's on me.
How does the board feel about that?
I'm not prepared to refer this to the zoning board. Typically, we've done that in a couple cases in the past when the board, at least materialistically, has looked at the layout of the plan and felt that it was optimized. And we've not even really started to look at the layout of this plan here.
Right. Mr. Levine?
I abstained on the last application, and on this application, it's not ready to go to the zoning board.
Okay, Mr. Stern?
I understand my colleague's concern, but at the end of the day, if the applicant is willing to take that risk, it's on their dime. And if we make changes, it's on them. I don't see why we allow them to move forward again at their own risk.
Mr. Cohen?
I mean, either way, it doesn't, I mean, we're reserving the right to make our decision at a later time. So again, it's not,
Okay, but right,
we're not, by saying you can go to the zoning board, we're not saying, yes, we approve it, right? So, I mean.
Well, basically, you are.
okay.
That's
So
something to the-
wait, I heard from everyone, and we have a 5-member board, and 3 members, Mr. Levine, Mr. Wasserman, and myself, feel it's too premature to have them go to the zoning board. The planning board, on a vote of 3-2, is not endorsing that they do that and recommending it.
I'll add that we haven't even done secret yet, and we'll have to
Right.
do secret if we haven't discussed the layout.
Right. And there were I think 18 people that spoke tonight, and they provided a tremendous amount of information that we have to evaluate and consider and see how it relates to what's on your plan right now. So the next opening on the planning board would be either our workshop in the end of February or our March meeting.
So that's, now you're telling me why I wanted to go to zoning board.
Well,
I'll take the one in February, of course, obviously.
Okay, but I'm discussing it with the board because there's so many
sorry.
aspects to all these
I apologize.
projects. We have a meeting in January next week with 3 projects. Then there's a workshop in the end of January where we're taking 3 new applications. In February, the agenda is completely full. And then the next opening would be if we do the same thing and split a workshop with a meeting on February 22nd, or the next meeting that's got an opening is March 4th. So I'll ask the board, does the board feel that we have so much to discuss, and the fact that we're using our workshop in January, where we probably won't have time to discuss this project in January at the workshop, and the February meeting is full, the earliest we'd be able to discuss it in a workshop would be February 22nd, and then have the applicant appear on March 4th. Or if we adjourn this to February 22nd, we will have no opportunity to discuss all of these issues before the applicant comes before us on February 22nd. Did everyone understand that? If we schedule them for February 22nd, there's no meeting time. They're all filled up, the workshops and meetings. We won't have any time to discuss this project before they come before us next.
I understand timing and dates, but I would appreciate having the appropriate workshop time to review this application as we do every other application.
Then we'll have to do that at the February 22nd workshop, and then adjourn them into March, to the March 4th meeting. So we'll have something to discuss and present to them at the meeting in March.
This is why I asked you to go to the zoning board now, because you're talking 3 months
You still
before
can't go.
anything happens here. Before, and
You-
it's 3 months before I see you guys again.
But look, understand, I've got to schedule in a total of 19 different applications.
Not arguing with you, you're right.
Everyone can't appear every month. That's the problem.
I
can't-
understand that.
I can't
know-
take Project A and say to Project B, I can't put you on for 4 months. Project A wants to come back month after month. I can't do that.
I agree with
scared
you.
everyone.
I agree with you, and that's why I'm saying, that's why I asked you to let me start the process at least at the zoning board, because it's the same problem there. All of those applications that you have problems with, they're got to go to the zoning board as well. Everyone's going to have a variance here or there.
But
So
you
now the
can't-
other aspect is, so now we let you go to the zoning board of appeals. Someone in the public is going to find out and say, damn it, we spoke at the meeting. We gave all of these concerns that we have about the project, and the planning board, they could care less about what we said.
You're
And
not
they're
approving
sending the
it.
plan as
Well,
it
you're
is to the zoning board
The
so they
zoning-
can get their variances.
The
You're
zoning
not-
board,
And then I'm going to
You're
get
not
phone
approving
calls
this.
on my home phone at night from these people.
the zoning board
You're not
can't hear
approving
your
it.
application until we do seeker.
They can't have a public hearing on our application. We
Well,
can
they
still
can't
talk to them.
hear it.
You're right. They can't give me a final, but they can hear me.
No, they can't do a public hearing.
They can.
They can, Paul?
The planning board, I mean, the zoning board of appeals just cannot make a determination on the application until a negative declaration is made by the planning board. Can they hear it? Yes, they can hear it, and they can continue to adjourn their public hearing for month after month until they get a neg deck from us. So can you start the process and then put it on hold? Yes, absolutely you can. And I would remind the applicant as well as the board members, he doesn't need your permission. He doesn't need your consent. He doesn't need your referral to go to the zoning board of appeals. The village law of the state of New York grants an applicant the right to make an application to the zoning board as long as they have an application pending for site plan. They don't need an order. They don't need a decision. They don't need a referral. So the applicant is free to make an application, but I agree with the board. If you feel that this is not a format that you're comfortable with recommending to the zoning board at this time, you don't give a formal referral. If he wants to make his application, there's nothing in law that prevents him from making his application. And he's going to go there and he's going to have a public hearing, and the public is going to come out, and the zoning board is going to hear all these comments, and they're going to have to adjourn it and wait for you to finish your seeker review before they can do anything.
What happens if the plan changes between the time he goes to the zoning board and the time we're ready to refer it to the zoning board?
Then he goes back to the zoning board and says, based upon further discussions with the planning board, we've made some modifications. Here's our change plan that we now are discussing with the planning board. And you're constantly going to be looking at a moving target. So I understand the applicant's desire to start the process with the zoning board. And I understand the planning board's desire not to make a formal referral until you're comfortable with the layout of the plan. But you can't stop him from going. You
Okay.
can not make a formal referral, but he's entitled by law to make his application.
Okay, fine. So I polled the board and 3 board members feel we're not making that recommendation that you go. If you want to go, it's of your own volition. Mr. Churgan,
I got you.
okay? And I'm going to tell you, as far as I know, there's a number of people applying to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I may be wrong, but what I heard was they normally only like to take 2 applications at a meeting and they only meet once a month. And
I know.
I don't know if anything's been scheduled yet for January and February. So just a word to the wise would be to find out from Mary what the story is there ASAP. Because there might be a backlog right now. I don't know what it is.
That's why I'm trying to get the process started. I understand.
Okay, so that being the case, then I'm going to recommend that we adjourn the application to March 4th meeting. So we have the ability at a workshop on the 22nd of February to discuss this project, because we have to have the time to discuss it in workshop. We can't have them come back with the same plan without our ability to have discussed it. So my recommendation is to adjourn this application until the March 4th, 2021 Planning Board meeting.
Alan, before you make, or I'll wait for discussion on it, I'd like Stu to look into trying to do something about the 5-foot buffer. There is no way we can screen a 5-foot buffer to protect the neighborhood.
I agree with Mark. I think that is just too minimal. And again, it's up to the zoning board, but if we're thinking about how we minimize the impact of the building on the neighborhood and on the neighbors, you need more screening than is provided. And that's how I feel.
Okay,
We've heard the comments. We will.
okay,
discuss it
anyone
with the
have anything
applicant.
else right
Thank you.
now? Anyone have anything else that they could offer to Stu so he's got a little heads up on something? They're gonna verify somehow the width of that Samuel Road, whether it's 29 or 30. He'll look to see what he can do about adjusting the driveway in and out where he can widen it to 10 feet if it's possible. And when we meet on the 22nd, they can listen to our deliberations and then come before us on March 4th.
Okay, so the 27th is the very first workshop that's available, because we did have technically a workshop before this.
I'm sorry.
What I said was, we technically did have a workshop. We were at a workshop before this, before we came here
Yes?
today. Yes, we did. I just want to make sure that the 27th of February is the very first time that we can be on. There's no other workshop we can be on.
No, it's not the 27th, it's the 22nd. Someone just check a calendar for me. I'm
The
pretty sure it's the
22nd, Ron.
It's the 22nd. Okay, I'm going to explain where we are right now. So next Thursday, we have a full agenda with 3 projects. Tonight, earlier, 3 projects that came in within the last week or so. Fox Development, or Mordecai, and or Joseph. We're scheduling those, for some of them for public hearings and some just for a regular hearing on January 25th. which would have been our workshop, but I have to fit these projects in. Otherwise, I have no place to put them until February, March, or April. So that's our workshop for January. It's filled up. February, I have a full agenda for February for the meeting on February 4th. The next open workshop is February 22nd.
If that's the best we can do, then
That's the earliest.
right. And there's no chance to have a special session.
No, I'm not gonna,
Okay,
you'll end
let
up
me
with
try to
special.
explain it this way. So for years, we were having 3 or 4 applications at a time. It was almost like if the applicant provided additional information, they could be coming back to the board month after month after month, and it wasn't a problem. But that was 3 or 4 applications. Now I got 19 that I'm dealing with. Normally, we never saw applicants at our workshops. We needed that time to go over and review what we needed to discuss with an applicant before they appeared at the next meeting. Now what we've done is to try to accommodate all these extra applications. We're using some of our workshops, like tonight was, and your application was a meeting, and then the remainder of it was a workshop. So on some of the other ones, the workshop for the 25th is not giving us any workshop time. It's just giving us the 3 applications. Your application, we started at 8 o'clock. It's almost 11 o'clock now. I'm not saying the other ones are going to take 3 hours, but they're going to easily take up the whole meeting, where there's going to be no time at the workshop on the 25th to have any discussions about this project. And it almost becomes impossible to create another meeting date. We're doing a second one as it is, which we never did. And it's almost impossible to find another date. If there's a date during the month, whether it's a workshop or a meeting, which falls on a holiday, or turns out that 3 board members cannot make the meeting because we need 3, otherwise you can't have a meeting. Over the years, it's almost become impossible, if we had to change a workshop date or a meeting date, to get all 5 board members available for a new date, including our village attorney, our village engineer, and a village planner. It becomes almost impossible. So right now, I would say there's probably not going to be a way to put another meeting on with the extra meetings that we have right now.
Okay, thank you.
So getting back to my recommendation is to adjourn this application into the March 2021 Planning Board meeting, because if we don't have the opportunity on February 22nd to have a workshop, then we're not going to be in position to advise the applicant on March 4th of what our concerns are. So if no one has any comments to that, then I move that we adjourn the application until the March 4th, 2021 meeting. And the board is not endorsing and recommending that the applicant go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, but if they wish to do it of their own volition at this time, we're not going to attempt to stop them.
Let's take one motion at a time. Right now, we have a motion to adjourn the public hearing on this application to the March 4th, 2021 agenda. Let's get a second on that agenda, that motion, and then you can go into discussion on that.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'll second it.
Okay, is any discussion needed? If
But
not,
Mark had said that he had some comments regarding the adjournment. No?
no, I don't think so.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, so I made a motion. Who seconded it?
Jeff Wasserman.
Okay, Ms. Levine, are you in favor? Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay, who seconded it again?
Jeff.
Jeff.
Okay, Mr. Stern,
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Okay. So that's agreed upon.
No, you still, the rest of the members got to vote, even though you made the motion and Jeff seconded, you should still vote on the motion.
Okay, Mr. Levine?
No, Mr.
I
Wasserman.
voted already.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yeah.
Miss-
for the motion, and Chairman Rubin
Yes,
for the motion.
yes.
Okay. Okay, so the motion is passed. The public hearing is going to be adjourned till March 4th, 2021. For the benefit of the attendees at the meeting, you should all be advised that you will not get a new public hearing notice with regard to the adjourned date of the application. It's sort of your responsibility from this point on to track the date. You're being notified now that it's going to be heard on March 4th. You can always consult Mary Ballack with regard to the dates, but you will not receive a new notice in the mail regarding the adjourned date of the public hearing. So I just want to make that comment for the benefit of the public.
Max, can you take a look and see how many people, members of the public, are still listening to this meeting and deliberation?
26.
There's 26 and one has their hand up.
Is it someone that did not speak before?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take that person. Andrea Ritter, you're muted, and please state your address for the record, please. Your
Hi,
house number on Weiss Terrace,
number 7. Can you
number
hear me?
7.
You hear me? Great. Yes, it seems that some of the people who spoke today don't have any problem with having a neighborhood house of worship in the neighborhood. The concerns seem to be about the traffic and the parking. And I had a question that I was wondering about the code that was written regarding the parking. Was that written before the new law or after the new law?
No, the parking related to existing regulations in the zoning code.
Existing, so that
Right.
means that they have been in effect for many years before the law came into being,
Right.
correct? So it seems that with such a big change by having this new law, perhaps the parking should have been reconsidered. Because if it's a neighborhood house of worship, it implies that people will be walking, and perhaps having less parking spots, a parking area would make the neighbors much more comfortable. If people were really living in the neighborhood and planning to walk to the synagogue, the house of worship. It seems that you're inviting, and I agree with, there was a gentleman who spoke about this earlier, and I think he was part of the congregation. He was worried that having the parking lot will increase the number of cars that are going to be coming to the house of worship. That was on my mind. Because I feel that if there are going to be a number of houses of worship in Chestnut Ridge, it seems that people should or would want to walk to these places, because that's why they're building these houses of worship.
But a lot of people say they're going to walk, but if it rains or snows or it's cold or windy, they get in their car and drive.
Well, I understand that. but that's
And
what I first
Andrea, excuse
that the
me.
parking could have been
Let's
visited.
let's not forget that also people are driving before they go to work, on their way home from work.
I do
And-
understand that.
And there's a ballroom for special events.
Well, that's a whole other situation. When people have gatherings, well, I just think that should have been a consideration in when this law was created, and it seemed like.
But Andrea.
Can I just comment on that, Andrea? It
Yes.
was a consideration. The board did look at the parking, and they endorsed the existing parking calculations for this use. So if you look at the local law with regard to neighborhood places of worship, paragraph F of that law says the required number of on-site parking spaces shall be determined by the table of general use requirements. So it was obviously taken into account, looked at, and found to be adequate. So they said that's what you have to meet. They didn't grant any sort of loosening of the parking requirements, which I think they might have done for residential gathering places.
Well, it seems that, or I'm thinking that as these are the first neighborhood houses of worship that are coming to be built. That maybe that part of that parking consideration could be reconsidered because maybe it needs some tweaking to satisfy the rest of the neighbors. That's what I'm saying. That's all. And it seemed like there was a congregant who was worried about this also. Someone in that congregation that is part of this group.
We heard.
I would just add it's from what I noticed, most of the people that were calling in, even the ones that were opposed, were saying that they were worried it wasn't enough parking. They were worried about overflow parking. I didn't notice that the people that were calling in were saying it was too much. They were kind of saying they were worried about the overflows. I don't think most of the people were concerned about the parking.
Yeah, I think the on-site parking was, I believe the board's intent there was to reduce the on-street parking that is not characteristic of a residential neighborhood. In this particular case, they still need a variance because they have 10 fewer spots than required under the code. And I'm a proponent of on-site parking myself.
Well, maybe it's a paradigm shift that people have to think about, changing the model. If it's a neighborhood house of worship, then perhaps it should be walked to. I remember my grandparents lived in the city. There was an Orthodox synagogue near them, and everyone walked there. They didn't drive. It wasn't.
But Andrea, that's because they lived in the Bronx or Queens, and they lived in 6-story apartment houses, and in the middle of the block there was a synagogue. And when they built those synagogues, everyone didn't have cars anyhow.
Exactly.
So it's a completely different lifestyle.
That's right. That's why I say perhaps there should be a paradigm shift. People should be.
Well, but we have to go by what the law is right now.
Law maybe needs some tweaking. That's just a point because it seems like it's
You know what? If the law does need some tweaking, it's an issue for the village board and not this board, because this board is powerless to address it and tweak the law. So
yeah, unfortunately, the village board seems deaf to what people think about this law. Anyway, I appreciate you going through this so deeply, and I just brought it up because it seemed an important point about the parking and the traffic, and it seemed like there was someone else in the congregation that was very concerned about it also, that it's just going to invite more traffic by having a parking lot there. Anyway, thank you, and that's my point.
Okay, before I forget, Mr. Churgan and Stu Stroh, I made up just a little checklist for Congregation Dexter Park, which Mary supposedly sent to you. It's handwritten. It's just so we don't forget some of these things as we go through the project.
She sent it.
Yeah, okay. All right. I think we're done unless anyone else has anything. Anyone on the board?
Yes. Just a reminder to the public that the workshop for this application is on February 22nd. Also, somebody has to speak to Lisa or somebody in Village Hall so that everybody in Village Hall, including Bruce, who sometimes answers the phone, if somebody calls and asks about a planning board meeting, that our workshops are now public meetings also, so that they have to be careful of what they say to the public.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, on 972, and it's late now, Mr. Silverberg, you put them off till last.
Right. Thank you for reminding me he is no longer on the
He
call.
left.
We lost them?
Yeah, he's
11 o'clock.
no longer with the call.
Okay. So that's what it takes to move meetings along. We should start at 11.
I'm sorry, start at 11 o'clock at night?
Sure.
It might go to 11 the next day, Mark.
Mark, apparently I've been sleeping for hours, so I'm good to go.
All right.
But it's important that somebody speaks to the staff to let them know, because it was an honest mistake that was made. But if we're going to have public meetings at our workshop, then, let's just start calling them public hearings from now on.
And can we have Mary? I know Mary's very busy, but when she returns, can we have just a review of the mailing to make sure that it was, at least from the applicant's end, it was done sufficiently based on the number of comments we heard tonight? Now, I don't see Lillian addresses on the list because they're probably not within 500 feet, but there were some people on Samuel who said they never got the mailing. So just to make sure from our end and the applicant's end.
This happens on every project,
Yeah.
okay? There's 67 on the list. She told me that they did everything in accordance. And
Okay.
at one point, Stu Stroh put up on the screen, or someone did, these receipts.
He has
Stu,
he has his hand up now.
Who does?
Stu, you want to
Stu.
Yeah.
you want to have Stu back in?
Yes.
I just don't want the public thinking that,
Where,
wasn't
Stu,
done really.
did you flash up on the screen? Was that you that did that to show some?
That was me. I didn't want to interrupt the whole proceeding, but I wanted to show you that I have copies of the receipts. They were submitted by email to Mary on December 18th. The mailing was done on December 17th. I submitted by email the receipts on.
Wait a second, the 17th was a Sunday?
No, the 17th was a Wednesday, I think.
Someone check, would someone check on the calendar?
Checking. 17th is a Thursday. December 17th is a Thursday.
Okay, so they were mailed on the 17th. I submitted the receipts to Mary by email on the 18th. That's what I flashed on the screen.
Right, okay.
And then we submitted them in person. We handed them in on Monday, the 21st.
Okay, so if members of the public are listening, what that shows is someone went to the post office, paid all the appropriate fees for the 67, if I counted them correctly, that were mailed out in the post office. Now, all we could say is they paid for these to be mailed out. They left them in the post office, and whether the post office mailed them out or put them in the corner or whatever they did with them, this applicant provided the information that's required. There's no way that the applicant is responsible if the post office didn't get them out during this, Christmas rush.
Could we just make
You
sure
can't control that. But this happens with every application. Some people say, I never got it in the mail.
Mr. Chairman, can we just confirm that 3 and 11 Samuel were mailed?
Mr. Wasserman, I confirmed when I was looking at it that 3 was definitely mailed.
Thank you.
I can send it and I could show you right now if you want to see it, but I did confirm it when I was
I don't need to see
scrolling
it.
through it. And the people on Lillian were not notified because they were not within 500 feet.
Okay.
So a couple of them said that, but they were not within 500 feet.
So once again, to the public, we cannot control it. He met his obligation. They went to the post office, they paid the postage on all these, and they assumed the post office mailed them. All right. If no one has anything else, I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor? That's everyone, Mr. Stern, Mr. Wasserman. And
I think we're
what
missing
happened,
Jeff.
what happened to,
Not Jeff, I'm sorry, Mark,
Where's Mark?
sorry.
We don't need him.
Mark dropped off.
Okay,
He's no longer on the call.
we have a quorum.
okay.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New
Oh,
Year,
same
all.
to you,
Happy
same
New
to
Year.
everyone.
Thank you.
Night.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.